Howdy one and all, it's your boy Skinny Penis back here again showing you some more Cypher setups, this time on the new map Pearl. We are going to be showing you the usual passive and aggressive setups on defense, as well as some pretty decent attacker setups to help you keep the rats in their cage, make sure no one is pushing behind you. This map is brand new, has a bunch of weird odd corners, weird stuff to peek, weird min-map, so we're going to go ahead and show you all that to make sure your bread is buttered and your toast is strudeled. First thing to know when starting out this map with Cypher is that unlike most maps, this map gives you a fair, decent amount of control over where you can place your tripwires, and I will show what I mean by that by showing you our first setup here on A. Starting out with our camera position first, we're going to go ahead and set ourselves up on this half wall, do a bit of jumping over here to this red box. Then from there, you're going to want to go ahead and slap your camera like a banana peel down right over yonder. Now, this setup is a bit more defensive. I would say this setup is good for maybe pistol rounds, maybe early starting rounds, maybe rounds you want to be a bit more defensive. Maybe the enemy team is being a fair amount aggressive on your site. This camera position is perfect for that. While it doesn't give you a complete look at A main, it does give you a decent look, and combined with our other utility, it is ironclad. Speaking of other utility, we are going to go ahead and make our way to looking at the cages that we have placed here first. Obviously, these are a bit up to interpretation. We will show you where we are positioning in a moment, but for now, if you want to go ahead and just place one cage right around there.
Yes, this should do.
Cover A main. From there, you have a secondary one that you can either put here to cover a link going from middle, or if you would like to maybe set up a one-way, maybe position yourself back here a little bit more completely off-site, you're going to want to go ahead and put yourself in this corner here. Line your crosshair up with the little wedge right there and toss it. Place it right there. Beautiful. As I was saying, when it comes to tripwires, they are a bit up to interpretation. As you can see here, there is a lot of places for you to put this on this map right here. There's a bunch of weird angles to put this on. If you want to put one right there, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to put it a little bit more up, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to put it over towards main or middle, excuse me, you can go ahead and do that. When it comes to tripwires, you obviously have to play around the other team. So if the other team has a raised boom bot, a Sova drone that likes to play low to the ground, or a dog, you're going to want to make sure that these traps are a little bit higher, maybe even throw yourself a little bit of a wonky one like so. But for the most part, these two low tripwires are the best that you are going to find. They isolate off this other area, that way you know if they're going to be backside, and they help let you know whether they are pushing completely onto site. At the start of the round, you're going to want to go ahead and position yourself in this dugout little pit area right here behind site. This is one of the best situations you can be in for a Cypher. As you can see, you just wait right here, take a look at your camera, make sure that you aren't seeing anything right there. If you start to see something there, shoot that, pop that off. If you want to go ahead and take a peek through there, you can. Get a couple shots off, you can do that. Take another peek. Maybe you start to hear them come around mid. If you want to do that, you go ahead and pop that trigger. You're going to want to go ahead and make sure that there are none coming over there, all while keeping yourself positioned all the way towards dugout, not giving yourself completely away to the enemy. If the enemy has already pushed their way onto site and you see them maybe around here or around here, and tag them, if you have this cage right here, you can go ahead and pop that one. It is a very, very wonderful one for a one-way right there, if you want to make sure that you are getting some good heads. The enemies pushing into this, provided they don't destroy your traps, are going to be a bit confused. They are not going to see you on site. They're just going to be trying to push in. Once they get around right here, you'll start to be able to see a little outline of their body. So you can go ahead and know if they're there. You pop your trap. You pop your cage. They're walking in. They're very confused. If they start to push right, they'll get into that trap. They start to push right, go forward. They get pushed into that trap. If they are pushing from middle, going around here, maybe you hear them. Maybe you just get a call from your teammate. Pop that trigger. Completely blind. Likewise, if you decide not to put a trap here and you decide to put it more up there, you pop that. They decide to push in. They cannot see any of this back part of your site, of your CT. That way you can maybe get a good shot on them. If the enemy decides to try to peek you dugout because they heard you, this is what they are going to see. If they crouch, they might be able to see you a little bit, so be aware of that. Now, as far as the breakdown goes for this setup, as I said, pretty passive setup, camera and everything included. Doesn't give you a lot of on-site presence when they start to push. However, if you time it right and you get your shots, This is a wonderful, wonderful setup, not only for the fact that you can sort of force them into positions that you want them to be in, maybe being able to take some 1v1s. This whole wall is completely wall bangable. All of this is completely wall bangable from both sides, meaning if you decide to see someone here or your trap catches them, you shoot them with the camera or your trap pops them, blow their heads away. Same thing for sight. If they trip your trap right there or anything of the sort, you can go ahead and just fire away through the wall. Again, I do recommend using this on your pistol setups if you are holding A. It is a very overall decent tester. However, they are going to know that you are there, so just be aware. After round 1 or 2, if they start to push and start to peek you really easily, it might be time to swap up the layout. Now, maybe you want to test your luck a little bit before swapping up your setup. Maybe they've caught you a couple times in this dugout, but they haven't exactly killed you. Maybe you're feeling a bit ego peakish. Maybe you just want to try it again and see what they do. This alternative cage setup and tripwire setup is going to be what you want if you are going to make sure that you make it out of sight alive in order to make the retake. For this, you're going to want to go ahead and set this tripwire right here just on that leaf. After setting up the tripwire, you're going to want to go ahead and make sure that you have your cage positioned right around here. It's a bit finicky, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. Just make sure it is not too far over this way towards the red hut. Make sure it's a little bit more towards the right side. And then for your second cage, you're going to want to go ahead and do the same setup we did where we set the one-way right there. Again, always be checking your camera, making sure you know where they are. You start to hear them come in. Maybe they trip your traps. Maybe they start pre-firing dugout. If they start doing any of those things and you want to get the hell off site, you're going to want to go ahead and start to peek, maybe get a couple shots off. Pop that one, pop that cage. They start to push you there. Make sure you get a couple shots off and just make your way off site. All while keeping an eye on camera. That camera is set up passively on that bridge, and you'll be able to make a very decent retake. Now, for a setup with a bit more presence on the site, as well as playing a bit more aggressively, this is the setup you're going to want. Again, for camera, hop on this little half wall right here, do a little crouching jump. Then you're going to want to put it right there in that crevice of the top of the wall and the side of the wall, just like so. You're able to get a good view of main as well as mid. Moving on, cage placement. This one, again, is going to be all before the round starts, so just be aware of where the wall is. You're going to want to go ahead and set yourself up directly against the blue wall. Then you're going to want to go ahead and make sure that your UI at the bottom, those two are put directly in the middle. You're going to want to make sure that middle line is splitting that pillar in half. You're going to want to put your cursor right around there. It's a bit hard to sort of ascertain, but once you test it a couple times, it's pretty easy. Then you just toss it like that. Second cage, you're going to want to, again, make sure that it is not too far to the left, not too far to the right. Make sure it is just like that. Tripwire, again, being aware of where the blue wall is, you're going to want to make sure it is, of course, eye level. That might be a little far into the wall, so if that one does not work, something like so. Second tripwire, you're going to want to put towards main. This one, they are only able to see half of the tripwire, which is very, very good for you. Again, just make sure that it is about eye level. Make sure that it is not on both sides of the wall. If you do something like that, it'll be a ton easier for them to go ahead and destroy. After you have everything set up, you're just going to go ahead and sit yourself right behind this little cafe. Maybe enjoy a nice cup of coffee. Check your cameras. You start to hear someone coming from mid or from main. Pop that cage. Take a peek. Be careful where you're aiming. Be careful where they're coming from. Be aware that there is a slight viewing hole from here. Not enough to get through without letting you know, but enough to where they can peek you and you might be a bit unaware. If you're on your camera and you start to see them mid or they shoot your trap, pop your one way. Very, very wonderful one way right there with that one as well. Again, be aware of where that little sliver of eyesight is. Just make sure of that. And then once you do that, take a good peek at there. Not being able to see you at all. So if the enemy tries to push into A main, they may start to hear something, or they may start to hear your teammates before they even are able to make a move at all. You tag them, pop your cage. They're not able to see either side of the tripwire, so they either have to guess, or if they decide to peek out here, again, this is what they can see, so be aware of that. And if they are pushing through mid, you go ahead and pop your one way. If you are still on backside, there is negative way for them to see you at all, but all the way for your camera to see them and for you to tag them. Just be aware that if you are peeking at the wrong time and they are pushed up here and you decide to peek here, they are able to shoot you before they shoot your trip, so just be aware of that. A lot of enemies might want to bait you out and not hit the trip at all, maybe not even shoot it. They might just want to wait for you to mess up, so always be checking your camera and never be slacking. Now for the breakdown for this setup, it is pretty self-explanatory. As I said, way more aggressive than the other setup that we had you use. This one gives you a lot more sight presence, makes the enemy a bit more aware that you are on the site, that they just can't freely take it and sit their legs up like it's a cozy vacation home. Gives you and your team a little bit more time to be aware of who's on site. Again, your camera is in a bit of a precarious placement, but it is well worth it to figure out where the enemy is, and overall this is a very well put together aggressive Cypher setup. With all of our setups out of the way on A, we are now going to direct our attention towards the B site right here with our only setup here. This one is a bit of a mixture of passive and aggressive, and I'll explain what I mean a little bit later in our breakdown. But for now, we're going to go ahead and set up our first trap. You're going to want to go ahead and slam your face on this wall, wrap your dick around it. Go ahead and put your cursor right about there. Chuck your trap. Just like that. Tripwire. Again, making sure that it is impaling you through the skull. Like so. Second trap. You're going to want to go ahead and put right here. There's a bit of leeway whether you want to put it further up or further down on this right here. I like to put it a little bit further down. You can go ahead and do either one. And then for your second cage, you're going to want to go ahead and make this line where you're going to go ahead and put below. You're going to want to put your cursor right about there. Throw it just like that. Little room for discrepancy, but make sure it's around this area. And then for your camera, you're going to want to go ahead and take a look at these two lines intersecting with each other and toss it like so. This cage will give you a beautiful one-way from mid if you start to hear anyone or maybe start to tag anyone with your camera, along with this tripwire. It is a very wonderful one, as they are only able to see one side of it. This cage right here is for if the enemy starts to push up really aggressively and they start to maybe push further into sight, you can go ahead and pop this cage. And for the trap, this is to make sure that no enemies are ratting and lurking their way right here. I know more times than not, I have positioned myself in this corner right here with a Cypher, and he has not had a trap here. I am almost positive if he had a tripwire here, I would be dead 100 times out of 100. So this one is very good. It makes them a bit more aware, and this is completely wall bangable right here. So if you go ahead and position yourself in B hall, which is where you are going to be positioning yourself for this setup, it is very wonderful. You go ahead and get them tagged and you unload. Now for it all to come together, you go ahead and position yourself next to Big Daddy right here. Take a look at your camera. Make sure they're not sitting in that little rat corner right there. You can go ahead and tag them if they are. You start to see them push in more. You start to hear them push in more. You can go ahead and tag, pop your cage, take a look. It covers that entire way onto the little corner right there. That way if they get hit by your tripwire, you can go ahead and, as I said, unload. Maybe if you feel a bit ballsy, you can take an ego challenge over there through the long way of B main. Now, if the enemy decides to push into this, this is what they are going to see. They are going to see nothing until you maybe shoot them with your camera. Again, they will be able to shoot it down from here, so just be aware of that. Just make sure that you are popping your cage. They are a bit oblivious to where you are. You could be there, you could be there, you could even be behind this B hall, or excuse me, this B sign right here. You could be all the way up there. So they are a bit confused. They're having to push into here. They get hit by your trap. Maybe they get their head blown out, anything like the sort, or maybe they just full on peek that way. There are not a lot of angles for them to peek and many angles for you to peek. If they're pushing through B main right here, maybe they're being quiet and taking a quiet approach. From this, your camera could not be in a better position right here, and I will show you just what I mean, like so. Beautiful view of their legs, nothing else that they can see, nothing else that they can do. You maybe tap one with your camera,
Cage triggered.
pop your cage. They have no recollection of to where you are. They might go ahead and start spraying right there, so just be a bit careful of that. But more than that, they will be a bit disoriented and pushing in. They will have to get rid of this trap like that because they won't be able to see it over there. Now, this setup, in my opinion, is one of the best Cypher setups on any map. It allows you to play both passively and aggressively. And what I mean by that is it sort of leaves it up to your interpretation of the round and what you want to do with your utility versus the enemy pushing into you and sort of forcing you to use your utility in a certain way. I feel like that's sort of how Cypher is on some sites, depending on the variety that you can do with your gadgets and such. But this site, given how open it is, given the different trap positions and cage setups that there are, I believe that this one sort of leaves it up to you to not only play around your team, but play around the enemy team as well, and make sure that you are in the best position possible to get any 1v1s that you are possibly able to get. Now, that is going to do it for our defensive setups here on Pearl, but that is not it, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to go ahead and show you a few attacker-sided ways to use Cypher's gadgets and such. For the first one, we are going to go ahead and check out some tripwires right here. Now, you may notice that there is a significant lack of tripwires mid. That is solely because for this map, I believe if you are going to pick a fight at all, the fight is going to be mid, and I will show you what I mean like so. If you go ahead and take a look at mid right here, you can go ahead and see that it is very, very open part of the map, and not only that, it gives you options to go to both A and to B if you so decide to do so, which in my opinion leaves your team in the best advantage possible if you decide to push mid. It allows your team to take duels. It allows the enemy team to maybe push up through mid doors or through art to give you a man advantage. And overall, it just gives your team a bit more coordination as opposed to split pushing one of these weird sites altogether. For our first tripwire over by A, we're going to want to go ahead and make sure that it is lined up like so. Not too high, not too low. Just right. Goldilocks' tripwire, they used to call it. Just make sure that it is angular to this wall like so. And bouncing our balloons over towards B, we're going to set up another tripwire right here. Making sure that it is, again, not too high, not too low. Just right like so. Making sure that the enemy is either having to destroy this or trip it if they want to go ahead and get behind you when you are pushing mid. To utilize Cypher's other very important gadget, his camera, we're going to show you some Cypher attack cameras right here. Our first one is going to be a bit of a passive attack camera. And what I mean by that is it'll very, very only see the beginning of the round, won't give you much help after the beginning of the round, but will give you and your team a bit of info. You're going to want to go ahead and jump and slap it right there. This one gets a wonderful view of A-Link right here. That way you can see if they're deciding to push up or if they're just deciding to hold that. Also, while maybe giving you a bit of info if you want to go ahead and go towards B and you want to make sure that they are not pushing up behind you. If your team decides to push A and you want a bit more info on site, you can go ahead and slap your camera right over here on the tree. This gives you a decent look at backside and this little corner right here because the enemy team is able to lurk up to right here depending on how fast your team goes. So this one will give you a bit of a decent view backside, but not entirely a good view of if someone is directly right here. If you would like a better view of someone who is maybe pushing you towards a main, this next camera is going to be beautiful for that. You're going to want to go ahead and set it up right over here. Putting your camera on that light right there gives you just the most absolute impeccable view of A main right here. That way you can tell if the enemy team is starting to push up with a shorty or a shotgun of some sorts. If you and your team are pushing mid or maybe pushing more towards the B side, this camera will be a very, very big help for you and your team. You're going to want to go ahead and make sure that the round has already started. Position yourself on the box that I just fell off of. Position yourself like so. Make yourself on the absolute corner of this box. Then you're going to want to go ahead and line it up with that satellite right there. This camera position allows you to see the entirety of mid, of course, giving up a little bit of mid plaza right there to the right. An enemy could be holding that and you would not know. However, this camera setup is very, very wonderful if you and your team decide to push towards B and you want to have a bit of a backup and make sure that the enemy team is not lurking and pushing behind you. A secondary mid camera that you can go ahead and set up if your team is starting to push a little bit more towards A is this one. Again, it is going to be after the round, and this one is going to open you up to a bit more of a precarious predicament if you peek 2 angles, so just be aware of where the enemy team is if you start to hear them pushing fast through mid. But this camera is very, very wonderful if you decide to push more towards A. Gives you a bunch of views of mid shops as well as door if they decide to push from B and try to come around you from mid. This camera will do wonders. If you just leave it here, the enemy team will not know that it is here, and they will not be ready for it. In my opinion, holding mid for Pearl is the most crucial part of this map besides actually planting the bomb. If you hold mid on this map, you pretty much have your choice if you decide that you want to push or if you decide that you want to hold it as a defensive team. So just always be aware of that. These 2 cameras there and over there are crucial to this site and to this map. So just keep those in mind when you're placing them. Maybe coordinate with your team, try to get a couple good free kills, and you'll be just right as rain. When you're on attack side and pushing with your team all the way towards B, this is a wonderful Cypher camera that you are going to want to utilize at every section available if you are pushing towards B. If you get all the way towards here over on mid, you're going to want to be very careful because they are able to just peek you right here. You could get timinged, but let's just pray that you don't, and you're going to want to go ahead and make sure that you're up on this little ledge, making sure you're not falling or making noise. You're going to want to go ahead and set your camera up right there.
Here.
That way you get a wonderful view of the site. You can see pretty deep all the way through tower right there. You can check out both halls. This camera allows you to shoot from both angles. You can get there and you can get there. But this camera is a wonderful camera to utilize if you are pushing onto site through mid. It makes sure that the enemy team is aware of where you are, but also a bit afraid. They see your camera come up, but they might not see anything else, and they might be wondering where you're coming from. Maybe you're deciding to push through mid and your team is pushing through long. There are a bunch of different scenarios that you and your team can try to ascertain here and figure out which one works. If you so choose to push B long with your team as well and want to set up an early camera to check to see if anyone is immediately peeking with an op or anything of the sort, this one is wonderful to do if you maybe want to go ahead and make sure that no one is trying to push up early. If you want a bit more of a push onto site and make sure that no one is in this little corner right here, you can even, if you want, throw your camera right here, check that close corner. If you know no one's there and you maybe want to push in a little bit more, you can even, if you want, throw your camera right there to get a even greater view of site if you so choose to do so. Pretty much when it comes to your camera pushing in, there are a bunch of very good angles that you can put your placement on, or your camera if you would like to place it in the right position. It's sort of just up to you and your team depending on the fights that y'all are taking. And then the last camera is going to be the closest one that you can get to when you're on site. This one might get shot immediately depending on who's holding it, but it makes sure that you at least know where the enemy team is. Right there, throwing it on that box like so, gives you a wonderful view of sight. That way you can have your team go ahead and push in, and you can make sure you are covering them at every angle known to man. And that will go ahead and do it for all of our Cypher setups here on Pearl. I want to thank you all so very much for checking out this video. It means the world to me if you have gotten here to the end. I am just getting back and recording after being gone for about a month, so it might be a little jagged, a little wonky. If so, I apologize. If it's better, shout out to the editor, whose name will be here somewhere. I appreciate them a lot. They're the fucking best. Thank you to them for putting up with my absolute horrid recording. You guys are the absolute best. We're going to be doing a lot more Pearl setups here for KJ and for the sort. Let me know if there are any other agents you would like to see me do setups for this map. Let me know if there are any other maps that you guys would like me to do setups for certain agents. There is a bunch of stuff I have coming in the pipeline very soon. So stay tuned, and I will see you all in the next video.